If statements are another fundamental part of coding. They're about giving a statement which the computer will interpret as either a true or false and make decisions according to that. So we're going to look at this really important part of coding. It's a way of a computer making a decision. It's basically decides on whether a certain circumstance is true, then it will go down this route, or if it's not, then it will go down this route. It's like those old choose your own adventure books you used to read, when the book said, if you go through the red door, then turn to page 12 and this will happen. If you go through the blue door, turn to page 24 and this will happen. It's a classic statement of if, then, else. They're the key terms for our if statement, and the computer looks at these and evaluates them, and depending on what it comes up with as being true or false, it will decide on the outcome, whether it goes through the red door or whether it goes through the blue door. These statements revolve around what's called a Boolean variable. A Boolean variable is a variable that is either true or false. It can only be one of those two things. So we can set a Boolean variable and say if this, and it will check whether it's true or false, and if it's true, it will execute the code. If it's false, it will skip the code. So an example might be if soccer player, and you've created a variable called soccer player, and it will either be true if the student's a soccer player, or it will be false if the student's not a soccer player. So the statement would be if soccer player, then get soccer boots, go to game, play soccer game. That means it checks whether that person's a soccer player, and then it will execute the code for that soccer player. So these Boolean variables are really important when it comes to if statements. We're looking for this key section of if, then, else. These are the main terms that we're looking at for building code around an if statement. And the easiest way to think about it is if you're lining up to go and get some food at the canteen. So imagine you're lining up at the canteen, you've got your bain-marie there, and you're lining up to get food. The canteen lady will have a whole list of people that have special requirements, and she'll be going through an if statement in her head. If Sarah comes to get food, Sarah's a vegetarian and she gets this food. So the statement would be something like, if Sarah, then give vegetarian meal. If Bob, give gluten-free meal. If Martin, then give lactose-free meal. Else, give the standard meal that everybody gets. So this is an if statement that checks who these people are. If they are that person, then it executes a specific code for that person. And that's the way if statements work. They're really common in coding, and it's really important that you get your head around how they work, because once you do, they become a really powerful tool. And we use if statements in everyday life, like in this canteen example. That lady will check if it's these particular people, then they get a special circumstance. Else, then it's all that. The remainder get sausages and mashed potato, or whatever it is, the generic meal. So if statements can be exceptionally powerful. Some important elements to the if statement that we can add in to add some functionality are some ways of dealing with that Boolean variable. So instead of it just being if, and if that Boolean is true or false, we can add some conditions in there. So for example, we can have the greater than, which is the usual greater than symbol that we use in mathematics, or less than. And this comes in if we're saying something like, if the number of students is less than the number of seats on the bus, keep loading students into the bus. That less than symbol evaluates a new Boolean statement. So it's the number of students, greater than or less than, and if that statement's true, then it will execute what's written in the code. Another one is our equal then. So we could say if name equals login name, then allow that person to log into this account. This is a way of checking things. So you can check strings. So it might be password entered by user equals password saved on application, then allow access, else don't allow access. These are ways of checking things. And you can see how that comes out as a Boolean statement. If the password entered by user is equal to the password entered or saved, then do something. It's either going to be a true or a false answer to that question. The other one is not equal to, and the way we often write that is exclamation equal. And that's exactly as it sounds. It checks if something's not equal to that particular statement. And we can get really complex statements in there where we check multiple things, where we say if the number of students is less than the number of seats on the bus and the number of people going to the soccer game is not greater than the number of people on the bus, then do something. You can put in AND statements, which you can check multiple Boolean statements, and you can also check in OR statements, where you can check this or that, then do this. So these if statements are a really fundamental part of coding and a really useful way to get the computer to decide which path to choose. Like those choose your own adventure books that we used to read, it really tells the computer if this is their option, then go down this path. If not, then go down this other path. And that allows an awful lot of coding potential. So I encourage you to have a look at if statements, give them a try, and just even write out a few pseudocode if statements for particular objects, like we looked at with that canteen line. Okay, so let's look at a couple of examples of if statements in coding. Let's look at the examples of handing out a pizza. We're going to create a variable called pizza slices, of which there's 8 in our pizza. We've got the number of slices taken. At the moment, that's 0. So we're going to create an if statement. So if the number of slices taken, number taken, is less than the number of pizza slices, then offer a piece of pizza to somebody. So at the beginning, it's 0. So it will enter this bit of code and it will offer pizza to a person. We then want to add 1 to the number of pizza slices taken, and therefore our number goes to 1. Again, it will be less than 8, so it will offer another slice, and so on until it gets to 8, and it will say number taken is 8. It's not less than or equal to the pizza slices, so therefore it won't work. And we can do less than, which is the code at the moment. If we put an equal sign next to it, it would be less than or equal to. So this will stop after pizza slices get to 7. We then close our if statement and we can have an else. So this will be entered once the number taken is equal to or greater than the pizza slices. What we want to do, we'll print, sorry, no more pizza. So you can see that only when this Boolean statement here, number taken less than pizza slices, is true, will it enter this code here. Let's look at another example. This one we're going to have someone enter their username. We've got Bob as a username and we've got them set their password, user password, as password123. A very bad password, but we'll go with it at the moment. So we're going to have an if statement. If username, which is Bob, is equal to the name entered by the person trying to access the thing, and in this case we're using the double sign, which is Swift, but other languages use slightly different versions of AND. User password is equal to password entered, then execute the code in the curly brackets. So only when someone enters Bob and the password is password123 will it enter the access to the program. Close brackets, else we're going to print, sorry, the username and password enters are incorrect. So that's an example of an if statement with an AND. So both this and this needs to be true for it to enter into the if statement. If one of them's false, then it won't actually enter into that section of code at all, and we'll go straight to the else statement. Let's have a look at one more. This one we've got, if a student plays soccer or plays basketball, then give a sports permission form. So this one will be entered if they're either a sports player or a basketball player or both. It will enter this particular loop of if statements. Otherwise, it will just skip over it because it will count the whole statement as false. So this is the OR statement, in this case represented by two vertical lines, and that represents OR. So this one's only going to execute if play soccer or play basketball or both are true.